Lexie Hull's quiet pause have become louder than any post-game interview when questions about locker room tension in Indiana surface. Hold and deflect. She simply didn't speak. That moment of restraint revealed more than words could behind the teams for smiles and media. Polish lies a storm of uncertainty, restricted free agency hanging over players' heads, CBA negotiations threatening the up and contracts, and a lingering fallout from a turbulent playoff exit. Even something as simple as Kayla Clark's once beloved black Air Force One. If you're here for the real story and not filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe. Supposed symbol of team unity now feels that a relic of optimism that faded too quickly beneath the surface. How silence wasn't avoidance. It was a reflection of a locker room stretched thin by forces far beyond basketball. Her unspoken message, because the heart of a larger truth, the challenge. As inside a fever, in the WNBA, a large on about town or effort, but about a viable in a league grappling with instability and noise. Players like Caitlin Clark are caught between admiration and attack. Their every move the sector do political, economic, and social lens. House choice to stay silent is more than personal stash. It's a statement how players navigate a world where speaking up can ignite a firestorm and staying quiet might be the only way to hold on to sanity. Caitlin Clark may be the face of a new era in the WNBA, but have you been paying attention lately? It's clear the spotlight isn't coming without a price. At the center of it all, a locker room walking on eggshells, a league balancing on the edge of collapse, and teammate whose silence is speaking volumes. Let's talk about Lexie Hull. While everyone's obsessing over viral clips and fantasy leagues' debt legacies, when navigating something a lot messier, restrictive free agency looming, CBA chaos and immediate to warm Bill around, or most famous teammate, and she just broke her silence. Sort of. It all started with a pair of sneakers. Kayla Clark's black Air Force Ones weren't just a fashion choice, they became a symbol worn courtside during a pivotal playoff run. They were dubbed a good luck charm, superstitions world fan, and cloned anything I could give Indiana an edge. But once the team exit the playoff, the sneakers lost their magic, and a fever that surrounded Caitlin started to curdle, because what started as hype quickly turned into something else entirely outside the court. Online hostility ramped up. Suddenly cut. Mark wasn't as a talented player, she was a target. Means hot takes, rage bait threads, all weaponized, undermine our town and question or place in the league. And let's be real, this wasn't casual critique, it was manufactured hate dressed up as commentary. But here's where things get complicated and say, I delete. Most players know Caitlin the real deal, even her rivals respect her game on the court. She's everything the hype promised off the court though. It's a different war zone, and Lexie Hull of all people is stuck right in the middle. Restricted free agency is looming over her like a storm cloud, with ongoing CBA negotiations and whispers of a lockout. No one knows where they stand. Player loyalty is being tested, coaching stability not existent. The league's foundation is shaking, and Lexie's future, with a fever, hangs in the balance. Meanwhile, Clark's stardom just keeps rising, and that makes her a magnet not just for media attention, before political narratives, social backlash, and some deeply uncomfortable allegations. Let's talk about that, because occur during the recent report, including for the Wall Street Journal. There's serious accusations of systemic targeting aimed directly at Caitlin Clark, a lead civil rights violations attempt to suppress her influence, and politically motivated smear campaigns are all in play. This isn't just about basketball anymore, it's about optics, money, and who controls the narrative, especially when the away when or more politically vocal supporter groups throw their weight behind her. Now you got a player caught in crossfire, politics, race, and corporate interests. It's not just messy, it's dangerous. And we haven't even touched the gambling scandals yet. Yes, there's more. Allegations are now swirling about NBA officials involved in gambling schemes that may bleed into WNBA territory. Accusations of game rigging, foul play, and outcome manipulation forbidding profits are casting long shadows over the league's integrity. And when a player like Caitlin Clark becomes a face of both the sport and the controversy, every missed call starts to look suspicious. Suddenly, it's not just about winning, it's about who stands again off the court, and somewhere in that chaos stands Lexie. How quiet, controlled, calculated. Her appreciation for Clark's sneak a game that wasn't a small talk, it was subtle, acknowledged, meant a nod to the cultural force Caitlin become, because Clark isn't just a player, she's marketability gold, and that brings his own kind of baggage. Whole silence on locker room tensions hasn't gone unnoticed. She didn't deny drama shooting confirmed either, she just didn't speak, and that silence says everything because external narratives fuel division players inside the league. I love managing emotional wreckage. The toxic environment created by rage bait and misinformation isn't an online problem. It seeps into real-life dynamics, it complicates trust, it messes with chemistry and forces players like Lexie to pick their battles carefully. Is she staying loyal to Indiana, to her teammates, or to herself? That's the question hovering over everything, because as a Fever grappled internal loyalty issues and a shaky roster, players like Hull have to navigate their careers and a league that feels increasingly unstable. Restricted free agency isn't just a contract detail, it's a stress test, and Lexie's position reflects a wider anxiety spreading across the WNBA with league-wide economic instability, political tensions, and mounting scandals. No one's future feels secure, not even Caitlin Clark's, and yet the respect is still there internally. The league sees Clark for what she is, undeniably talented, but that truth is being buried beneath layers of misinformation and public vitriol. The manufactured rivalries, the race-baiting discourse, the politicized narratives, they all serve to distract from what's actually happening. The league is in trouble now because of his players, but because of everything orbiting them: unstable leadership, coaching controversies, economic rigidity, gambling scandals, media exploitation is a perfect storm, and the eye have it. We got Clark standing tall even as a system around her starts to crack. Lexie Hull knows this. That's why she's playing it close to the chest. Her silence isn't passive, it's survival, because when every word can be twisted, when every comment and become content staying quo, why it might be the only safe move left. And that's the real story here. The chaos inside the Indiana Fever locker room is not about petty jealousy or poor chemistry. It's about the unbearable weight to being at the center, something bigger, something broken. Hull's silence isn't a betrayal of her teammate, it's an acknowledgement of just how dangerous the conversations become, especially when their conversation involves accusations of match-fixing, politically charged support groups, and players being turned into pawns for someone else's narrative. The truth is, Caitlin Clark dinner. As for any of this, she just want to play basketball. But now our presence is being used. The sparked outrage drive clicks and deepened divisions that we're already there. And that makes every game a battleground on the court and off it. Meanwhile, the WNBA faces an identity crisis as political forces pushing the outside and financial instability rattles inside. The league risks losing sight of what actually matters: the players, the talent, the competition, the game itself. And as for Lexie, how she's caught in the middle, a player with real heart, real skill, and a very uncertain future. Her subtle support, a clock style, her silence on locker room drama, and a precarious contract status all tell the same story. This league isn't just about what happens in four quarters, it's about survival in the system spinning out of control. So, when we talk about the Indiana Fever turning on Caitlin Clark, is not about betrayal. It's about the unbearable pressure being human in a league that demands perfection, silence, and unbreakable loyalty, and sometimes silence is more than words ever could. Let's be honest, this drama's just getting started. If you're as deep in it as we are, drop your thoughts in the comments. Are you Team Clark, Team Lexie, or just Team can we please focus on basketball again? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and more breakdown to the beautiful chaotic mess we call modern sports. See you in the next one. If anything, we're only scratching the surface of just how messy things have got for the Indiana Fever, and by extension the entire W. And the real problem is not just about a locker room dining MC or few bad games, is that Caitlin Clark has somehow become the lightning rod for everything wrong and everything marketable about the lead. And when we say everything, we mean the good, the bad, and a deeply political. Clark isn't as a rookie with serious skills, she's also a symbol, and that's where things start spiraling, because symbols get co-opted, they get dissected, they get dragged into conversations they never sign up for, and right now the conversations around or are growing louder than our actual performance. That's the irony. She's playing game her life, while people off the court are playing completely different. Let's go back to Lexie Hull. Second, her contract is up in the air. She's a restricted free agent in a league where restricted might as well mean at the mercy of chaos, because right now nothing's certain, not salaries, not rosters, not even what it is, or be a season of the CBA negotiations go south. Players don't deserve a train him when they have to read legal fine print and PR fallout like they're prepping for courtroom instead of playoff as well. If he was quieter, more level-headed players, Lexie isn't doing interviews trashing teammates or or tweeting vague some tweets. She's staying neutral, at least publicly, but silence doesn't mean indifference, especially not when it's strategic, because when you're dealing with internal tensions, unstable coaching, and high-stakes media narrative, keeping your mouth shut can be the only way to protect your careers. So when Lexie did speak briefly, it wasn't a rant, it wasn't some dramatic tell-all, it was just a small thoughtful nod. Clark's sneaker game, and that comment of all things sent ripples. Why? Because an environment is tense, even a small calm, and can feel like loyalty pledges. That sneaker reference wasn't just about fashion. It was coded. It said, "I see you, and right now." Clark probably doesn't hear than enough inside that locker room now, because her teammates hate her, but because the entire dynamic is poisoned. Everyone's paranoid, everyone's under a microscope, the vibe is off, and no one knows who they can really trust now. Zoom out. Outside Fever, the entire WNBA is under siege. It's not just a gambling allegations, which by the way can be the biggest scandal to hit pro basketball in years. It's also the political tension. Caitlin Clark's backing from vocal right-leaning support group has turned into a polarizing figure without or even trying. She didn't make her so political. Years did that for her, and suddenly her every move is viewed through a hyper-political lens. Who congratulate her, who doesn't, who gives her the ball, who rolls their eyes when she takes a shot. It all becomes evidence in a trial she never agreed to tend. Now factor in the civil rights allegations. Yes, civil rights. That's the level this is reached. Reports suggested there are deliberate systemic efforts to undermine Clark's influence, attempt to barter and keep her from rising too fast or becoming too dominant presence. If that even partially true, we're not just dealing with sports drama, we're looking at a league tearing itself apart from the inside out, and the wild part, most of this has nothing to do with Clark herself, if about what she represents to some. She's a next big thing to others. She's a walking threat to the old guard. To some fans, she's her favorite player. To others, she's a symbol of everything they think is wrong with the league. That's a lot for a rookie to carry, and it trickles down. Lexie Hull's future is directly affected by the chaos the Fever want to build around Clark. Does that mean cutting veterans? Do teammates feel sidelined? And the PR push to make Clark the face of franchise? These are real questions, and no one's answering them on record, because the second you speak honestly, you risk getting dragged online. And in this media climate, perception is reality. The silence, it's survival. And yet underneath all that tension, there's a kind of tragic irony. The WNBA is finally get the mainstream attention it deserves. It's happening under the worst possible circumstances. Headlines on about comeback wins or buzzer beaters. They're about alleged game rigging, locker room infighting, Twitter feuds, politicians jumping into the fray, allegations of racial bias, and yes sir, Nico superstitions. Remember the black Air Force Ones? At one point they symbolize hope, a sign that maybe, just maybe, the Fever could have 5 yards. But when the player dream crumbled, so did the illusion, and people started looking for someone to blame. Clark, too much hype, teammates not enough loyalty, coaching a mess for an office, playing PRCS instead of basketball. It's all unraveling, and Lexie, who should be focused on the next phase of a career, is stuck trying to make sense of a team dynamic that shifted completely. She's seen firsthand how online or his bleed into real life, how fans pick sides based on rumors and half-truths, how entire careers can she have based on one poorly timed, cool, or misunderstood gesture. And when she chooses not to speak on certain topics, is not because she doesn't have thoughts, is because the stakes are too high. One wrong word, and she's a line one on his moment, and suddenly she's anti-Clark or anti-team or anti-progress. That's the danger. Being in a league does become a political and economic battlefield. And let's not forget, players aren't as managing the drama they're living through while competing at the highest level. Every game ever we pass, every glance, it comes a data point in someone else's narrative. And while we debate loyalty or locker room chemistry, the players are left managing trauma, real, ongoing emotional stress from being in the middle of something that spirals far beyond basketball. That's the real toll, the mental fatigue, them motion. Austin, the pressure performed perfectly under a microscope while navigating political crosshairs and corporate agendas. It's enough to break anyone, and yet Clark and how keep showing up. They keep playing because despite everything, despite the noise and the rumors and a very real instability, the games still matters. That's what makes the story so heartbreaking. At the center of all this are young women who just want to play pro ball, who trained for this their whole lives, who dreamed of this moment, and now they've arrived. They're stuck in a system that prioritizing narratives over nuance. Caitlin Clark shouldn't have the key carry the weight of being a cultural flashpoint. Lexie Hull shouldn't have to tiptoe around media landmines just to get a fair shot at free agency. But that's where we are, so where does it go from here? That's the question everyone's asking. Where the league stabilize, will CBA negotiations hold? Will the gambling scandals fade or explode? Will Clark be allowed to grow into a row without being used as a proxy and a much bigger fight? And what happens of players like Lexie? How in the process, the ones caught between headlines, the ones navigating silence, not because they don't care, but because caring too loudly might cause them every day in this story and over, not even close, because every day the stakes keep rising. Every tweet, every game, every press conference, the WNBA is sitting on a powder keg of potential and pressure, and unless something changes, unless the league and refocus on the sport itself, it's not just players we're going, burnout is the whole system. This is a story about one team or one player. This is a slow motion unraveling, the league trying to figure out what it wants to be while the world watches a magnifying glass and a megaphone. Caitlin Clark walked into the WNBA with generational hype, record breaking college career, instant marketability, a fan base ready to buy whatever jersey she wears. But she also walked straight into a political firestorm disguised as a sports league. Is not just about basketball anymore, it's about narratives, and everyone wants to own hers. But the people caught in the crosshairs, they're not influencers, they're not brand mascots, they're athletes, and that's what keeps getting lost in all the noise. Lexie Hull's silence isn't about drama, it's not a confirmation of them juicy locker room betrayal, it's restraint. She knows that speaking freely, even with good intentions, can be twisted into a headline that follows her for the rest of her career. She's watched to happen others, one soundbite, one offhand remark, and suddenly you the villain of the week. That kind of pressure forces players into impossible positions. You expect to support your team, uplift the league, stay apolitical, stay related, will say, stay visible, stay quiet, but also speak up when is your moment. What does that even mean when a narrative changes every 24 hours, and yet somehow fans expect cohesion? People want a fever to have chemistry, unity, perfect synergy. But how when you got entire franchise whoring around one player, Caitlin Clark, while the rest of the team lives in the state of limbo when teammates or either been quietly pushed out or forced conform to a system that seems tailor-made for one superstar? It's not jealousy, it's survival instinct. Because when contract on a line in the league's economic future is uncertain, players start protecting themselves. You do it to loyalty. Only stretches so far when your paycheck, your playing time, and your reputation are all under threat. That's what makes Lexie Hull's position so precarious. She's not some bench warmer with nothing to lose. She's a smart, capable player with real potential, and now a restricted free agent who might not even get a fair shot. How the league shakes out her future could hinge on things that have nothing to do with her actual performance. She had Clark ally in the media. Is she too quiet on controversy? Is a marketable enough in a league that now prioritizes narrative over nuance? Those are the kinds of questions that shouldn't matter, and yet they do. And let's not pretend this is a fever-only issue. What's happening in Indiana is just a microcosm of what's happening across the entire WNBA. Every team is being reshaped by forces I go way beyond the game, coaching decisions influenced by PR, roster moves impacted by lead politics, players Conway, scandals they had no part in. It's no wonder people are starting to ask who's actually running the show. Because while Caitlin Clark is being scrutinized for every foul, every stare, every interaction, there's a much bigger storm brewing, a possible lockout if CBA talk fall through, gambling scandals casting doubt on league credibility, and an ever-growing disconnect between what the league wants present and what players are actually dealing with. And still the games go on. Clark keeps dropping dimes and raining threes. Lexie keeps showing up head down, doing the work. The rest of Fever roster keeps pushing forward under a microscope that gets more unforgiving by the day, and fans, they keep feeding the cycle, often unknowingly, by buying to rage bait, clickbait, and every out of context CL.